In the last video, I showed you how to answer the civil service test verbal questions. Now we'll move on to the numerical test, and I'll show you how to ace this one like we aced the verbal test. Step 1. Read the question. The table below gives the average numbers of coffee. The coffee drank in the different age group. One cup of coffee contains 95 milligrams of caffeine. There are 880,000 beans in the 1 kilogram, and this makes 130 cups of coffee. On average, coffee drinkers eat 2.8 coffees each year. The UK population is 66 million people, of which 12.4% live in London and 13.9% are aged 21 to 35. And then you have the table, and then the question: how many cups of coffee are consumed each day by 21 to 35-year-olds living in London? Round your answer down to the nearest 1,000. Now, the key to this is to not read the question. You messed up if you believe me on reading the question first. So you need to critically think. That's step 1, is critically think. Don't just trust what someone says you to do. That's how you lose at these tests. They're critical thinking tests. So the first bit of this is all nonsense information you should ignore and shouldn't have listened to before. What they want you to do is just times 4 numbers together, which is how we staff our civil service these days. That's the quality of people they require. So 66 million times 12.4% to get the population of London, which you didn't even know. You can just Google that, you don't need to calculate it. And then you times that by 39% to get the number 21 to 35-year-olds. And then you times the 21 to 35-year-olds by the number of coffee drinkers, 1.3. That'll get you around about 1,478. This one here. But the fact that you had to ignore all of this stuff up here, right? That was a clue that this was actually a trick question, because the trick is that they force you to assume that the percentage of London and the percentage of age are independent when they're not, right? The ages in the UK are not equally distributed across all regions, and London is constituted of that 13.9% by skewing the age down by the other age. So by timing them together, you're assuming they're independent when they're not independent, and that is incorrect inference, right? So what they want you to do here, if you are effectively critically thinking, is not to put the answer that we put. And instead what they want you to do is they want you to close the tab and never go back to this test again, and then they'll ring you up on a call that your phone will lit up as suspected spam, and then you answer that and it'll take you to a secret interview where critical thinkers like you and I live. And I hope there's nothing on my search history that's bad. Oh. No, that seems all good. We're all good. Okay, next numerical question. Step 1, don't read the question. Step 2, let's talk about the answers. Now, because of the previous question, we know that you always must assume, as a matter of consistency across this test, you've got to assume independence for these kind of questions. Technically, you might be offense, but who can be that smarty, right? So you just times these two numbers together. 10% times 15% gets 1.5%. There you are, rolling. Except there is an option here called cannot say. Now, obviously you can say, there's no physical inability for you to say. So what that is highlighting is, again, another trick question for you to think about, which is these events may not be independent. So there's a kind of a trick, because they've lured you into a false sense of security with independence on the previous question. So then you're expecting it here, and then you get bamboozled. So assuming not independence, what are the possible answers? Now we've wrapped up 1.5%. That can't be true because that's independence, and we've destroyed cannot say because you can say. So what's left on the board now? Given they are not independent events, but we're looking for the intersection between them. The minimum is, the minimum between the two ones, which is the maximum being 10%. I've drawn a little diagram here, right? So you got the intersection there. And then, so it has to be bigger than, it can't be, it could be smaller because it can't be the same size. The intersection can't be, not including the fact that it's intersected between them, so you get a maximum of 10% because it's the smallest one of two of them, and it's the intersection. I hope that diagram makes it it is an intersection. It's clear. You get the point. So, you know, it can't be 12.5% because that's above what it would be to be an intersection. 10% we're going to have to use our Bayesian priors again. Like, what's the probability exactly? The absolute maximum, like, is zero. The probability of a single point is zero. So, so exactly any single point of probability is zero because we're assuming that this is going to be continuously distributed from a random variable. Um, so that leaves us 1%. It was the independent conclusion, so it can't be that one. So that leaves 1% as the correct answer to this question. Okay, question 3 of the civil service numeric test. Step 1, read the question. A game rewards players with trophies every time they win, but it also removes trophies when they lose. All games must be won or lost. Players can move between areas of the game depending on how many trophies they have. The information for that is below, and we see how many trophies they gain for winning, losing. They have 600 trophies currently, and assuming there's 50-50 chance of winning or losing, how many area trophies we need to move from 600 because they're just about in area 3, just passed over, to area 4, which is 1,000. So that's a 400 trophy difference. Now, a very stupid and idiotic way to do this would to be calculate the expected number of trophies per game, and then divide that by how many trophies they need to get to move to the next area. But let's go for it. So that would just be 22 minus 10 divided by 2 to get the expected number of points per game, given the 50-50 chance, which is 6, and then 400, given that one, divided by 6 would be how many, the expected points per game, and then how many points you would need to get across there, which 400 divided by 6 is 66.7. Now you can't have a part of the game, so you would have to round up to get 67 from 66.7. If you do it from this stupid method, and then you see it's so stupid that they don't even offer that as an example, like a possible way you could mess up. That's how stupid that is. So, because realistically, right, what we want to measure here, we don't want to know the expected number of trophies per game. We want to know the expected number of games given the trophy attribution. That's the word, between the areas, right? And if you just assume that you go from 600 to 1,000, that's not how it works, right? Because there's a 50-50 chance in the first round you get knocked into area 2, for instance, and then it's like the expected chance of getting out of area 2 plus the expected area plus that, all the possible scenarios around area 2 plus then going back to area 3 and getting above, right? So you got to talk about like overshooting, right? So you got to consider the probability, like the expected 6 is not over and over and over again. Like there's a possibility you were like 980 and then 1 and then got to over 1,000, right? You've got to model that, right? So you've got to model all of that. The best way to do that is load up Python, model some Markov chains through like an iterative bit of code, run that for a while efficiently. You have infinite time for these tests. I mean, if you're not running like Markov integrated systems and solving that systems for what it converges to, I mean, do you want the job or not? Like, you're gonna have to run these things. In for the Chinese civil service, you probably have to like do Markov by hand. So like, you consider like count your blessings, really. So the equation for that would probably look something like this, right? So, it's iterative, and we've got a 50-50 chance because of the first roll. You either go into area 2 or area 3, and then that runs back into, so this like links back to this one, depending on which one you get to. And it runs again, and we calculate what that converges to in Python. You get up Python, realize you haven't downloaded the correct libraries, download the correct libraries, realize why is library downloading so difficult, and then you run that for a while, and that should give you for when s is greater or equal to 1,000 for the expectation, that should converge to around 67.08. And again, we can't have a partial thing, so then we, when it gets to 67.08 as the convergence of that equation in your Python code, then it's that, and then you round that up to 68 because you can't have part of a game, you silly. And then you get the 68 one there. And so that's how you solve that one there. And that's I was hoping it'd be cool and I'd say done like the rest. Okay, next question.